"Pops, welcome to your new home," said my son, Devin, pulling up to the curb of the facility. "They'll take better care of you here than I can." I grabbed my duffel bag in silence and walked inside. He just didn't expect to receive a subpoena a few days later. My name is Augustus Sterling. I'm 82 years old, and this is a story I need to tell. I was born in Macon, Georgia. I moved to Atlanta when I was young, looking for a better life. I worked for 40 years as an electrician. I started as a helper at 16 and became one of the most respected in the whole county. I built up a loyal customer base, saved money dollar by dollar, bought my own house, and even managed to get a small duplex to rent out. I always thought I was leaving a secure future for my son. How wrong I was. Before I continue this story, I want to thank the channel, The Wisdom Hour, for giving me the opportunity to tell what happened. And I ask you, whoever is listening, to help this channel by subscribing and commenting with the city you're watching from. They have a new story here every day, and maybe mine will help you understand that age is not a synonym for weakness. When Devin pulled the car up that Tuesday morning, I knew something was different. Over the past few months, he'd started showing up at my place more often. He was always a complicated son, let's say. At 40 years old, he never could hold down a steady job. He lived off odd jobs, always had some excuse ready, and was always needing a little cash loaned to him. My late wife, God rest her soul, always told me I was too soft on him. "Gus," she'd say, "you'll see. That boy will only learn when life teaches him a lesson." She passed away 5 years ago, without seeing how right she was. After I became a widower, Devin started visiting me more frequently. At first, I even thought it was sweet. I figured his mother's death had finally made him mature, but I soon realized the visits always ended the same way. He'd look at the bills on the table, ask if I needed help with the bank, and suggest it was too dangerous for a man my age to live alone. "Pops, don't you think it would be better to have someone around to look after you?" I always told him I was fine, that I still drove, still took care of the house, and still saw my old clients when they needed a quick repair. But Devin became more insistent. He started bringing brochures for nursing homes, assisted living communities, as he liked to call them. He'd say they were modern places with activities, nurses, and doctors. "Pops, it's for safety. What if you get sick at night? What if you fall in the shower?" I couldn't forgive myself if something happened. Deep down, I knew it wasn't genuine concern. When you work 40 years reading people through their electrical problems, visiting their homes, and talking in their kitchens while you change a circuit breaker, you learn to see past the pretty words. The day he showed up with the papers already prepared was the moment I understood that talking was over. "Pops, I've resolved everything. You'll be well cared for at the Havenwood retreat. I've already paid the first month's fee. I've already talked to the director. You just have to sign here and pack your bags." I looked at those papers and saw something he didn't know I'd noticed. My name was also on other documents underneath. A power of attorney, a transfer of account form. Devin thought I was a senile old man, but 40 years of messing with electrical wiring teaches you to pay attention to the details. I signed the assisted living papers, but I didn't sign the others. "Son, what are these other papers here?" He got nervous and quickly snatched them away. "Oh, that's just bureaucracy, Pops. You don't need to worry about that right now." I smiled and didn't say another word. I've always been a man of few words, but with my eyes wide open. And in that moment, my eyes saw everything I needed to see. On the way to the facility, Devin talked about how happy I was going to be there, how I'd make new friends, and how I'd have activities every day. I listened in silence, looking out the window, watching my life pass by on the outside. When we arrived in front of that old building, with a faded sign that read, "The Havenwood Retreat," I knew my real fight was just beginning. The smell of disinfectant, mixed with something I couldn't identify, hit me as soon as I stepped into the lobby of the Havenwood Retreat. A thin woman with thick glasses approached me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Sterling? Welcome. I'm Ms. Evelyn Reed, the social worker. Your son has told us everything about your situation." Devin gave me a quick wave, mumbled something about having important papers to sort out, and bolted out the door like someone fleeing a scene. I stood there, my worn leather duffel bag in my hand, observing everything. Ms. Reed took me to see my room, a small cubicle with 2 beds, a wardrobe split down the middle, and a window that overlooked a dreary inner courtyard. "You'll be sharing with Mr. Warren Fields, a very polite gentleman. He's in physical therapy right now." While she spoke, my eyes were already doing what they always did at clients' homes, analyzing the loose outlet on the wall, the burnt-out bulb in the bathroom, and the strange noise coming from the old air conditioner. 40 years as an electrician teaches you that when the basic things are poorly maintained, it's a sign that the rest is too. "Your son made it clear that you have some minor memory issues," Ms. Reed said, flipping through a folder. "But don't worry, we have experience with that here." I looked her straight in the eye. "Ms. Reed, may I ask you a question? What kind of problems did my son say I have?" She looked a little thrown off. "Well, he mentioned a few episodes of confusion, forgetting to take your medication, and difficulty cooking." I nodded slowly. Interesting. Devin had created a version of me that even I didn't recognize. The first lunch was revealing. I sat down at a table with 3 other gentlemen. Mr. Lionel Vance, who had been a banker, Mr. Roberto, a former teacher, and Mr. Fields, my roommate, who I found out had been an accountant. They all had similar stories. Kids who suddenly showed up, overly concerned about their parents' safety, papers to sign, and promises of regular visits that never happened. "My son said he would come every Sunday," Mr. Vance recounted, listlessly stirring his food. "It's been 2 months since I got here. He's shown up 3 times. In the afternoon, a young nurse named Kendra came to administer my medication. Mr. Sterling, your son left this list of medications that you take." I looked at the prescription. Blood pressure medicine I never took, a tranquilizer for anxiety I never had, and diabetes medication I didn't need. "Kendra, can I speak to you privately?" She looked at me with some suspicion, but agreed. "Sweetheart, I don't take any of these medicines. My blood pressure has always been normal. I've never had diabetes or anxiety." "Well, at 82, you learn that life is too short to be anxious about nonsense." Kendra looked confused. "But your son was very specific about your health condition." "Kendra," I said calmly, "how long have you known my son?" "Since yesterday, when he brought you in." "And how long have you known me?" "A few hours." "So, answer me one thing. Who do you think knows my health better? Him or me?" She was silent for a moment. "I'll talk to Dr. Hughes about this," she said, putting the medications away. That night, lying in bed next to Mr. Fields, I listened to stories that made me understand I wasn't the only one inside. Mr. Fields told me he had a house in Buckhead, a considerable savings account, and that suddenly his daughter decided he couldn't take care of himself anymore. "Gus, you know what hurts the most? They think we're stupid. That just because we're 80 years old, we don't understand anything anymore." I stared at the ceiling, listening to the rain beat against the window. "Warren, can I ask you a question? Did you sign a power of attorney for your daughter?" He sighed deeply. "I signed it Back then, I thought it was just for emergencies. The next morning, during breakfast, I observed more details. The food arrived lukewarm. Some staff members treated the seniors like children, yelling unnecessarily. I realized there were two classes of treatment in here: those who had present and demanding families, and those who had simply been dumped. I was clearly in the second group. But there was something Devon didn't know about me. 40 years of working in different homes teaches you to observe, to listen, and most importantly, to gain the trust of the right people. When Kendra passed by to distribute the medication again, I called her over. "Kendra, do you have children?" "I do, Mr. Sterling. 2 little ones." "And if one day, when you're old, they brought you to a place like this, saying it was for your own good, how would you like to be treated?" She stopped what she was doing and looked at me. "With respect, Mr. Sterling? With dignity? Then treat me that way. Not like I'm a problem someone wanted to solve by dumping here." In that moment, I saw something in Kendra's eye that gave me hope. It wasn't pity, it was recognition. She understood that I wasn't just another confused old man abandoned by his family. I was a man with a history, with dignity, with lucidity, and most importantly, I was a man who wouldn't quietly accept being treated like a nuisance. Devon thought he had put me on a shelf, far away from his plans. He had no idea he had just given me the perfect time and place to plan my response. As I drank my lukewarm coffee that morning, looking through the dirty cafeteria window, a certainty grew inside me. My son had underestimated the wrong man. The first week at the Havenwood retreat taught me more about my son than 40 years of living with him. Devon never showed up once to see how I was adjusting, nor did he call. It was as if he had dropped me off at a store and forgotten I existed. But I wasn't standing still. From day one, I started doing what I always did when I arrived at a new electrical installation: mapping everything, understanding how things worked, and finding where the problems were. Dr. Alan Hughes showed up on Thursday for my first medical consultation. A man in his 50s, gray-haired, who greeted me with a firm handshake. "Mr. Sterling, I'm going to do a general evaluation. Your family mentioned some concerns about your health." He opened a folder and began to read. "I see here that you have a history of mental confusion, episodes of aggression, and difficulty taking medication." I let him finish reading the entire list that Devon had invented about me. "Doctor," I said with the calmness I'd learned in decades of dealing with difficult clients, "may I ask a few questions before you begin the exam?" He looked surprised, but agreed. "Have you ever spoken with me in person before today?" "No, Mr. Sterling." "And everything you know about my condition came from my son?" "Exactly." "Then allow me to present a different version of the story." For the next 15 minutes, I told Dr. Hughes about my life, my job, my activities, right up to the day I was admitted. I talked about the medications I never took, the independence I'd always maintained, and the clients who still sought me out for small repairs. Dr. Hughes examined me carefully, tested my reflexes, my memory, and my coordination. He asked questions about dates, names, and recent events. When he finished, he remained silent for a while, writing things down on my chart. "Mr. Sterling, I'll be direct with you. Your tests do not match the report I received. Your blood pressure is normal. Your reasoning is lucid. Your memory is perfect for your age." He closed the folder. "May I ask how you feel about me being here, doctor?" "Do you have parents?" I asked. "I do. My father is 78. He still drives. He still takes care of the yard. And if someone showed up tomorrow saying your father needed to be admitted, would you believe it without investigating? Dr. Hughes looked at me for a long moment. I understand your point, Mr. Sterling. I will reevaluate your case with more care. That afternoon, during the recreational activity, a bingo session that felt more like treatment for children, I met Mrs. Lena May, 89 years old, a sharp woman who had been a teacher for 50 years and was there at her granddaughter's insistence. Gus, have you noticed that they treat us all like we're senile? She said, sitting next to me. Listen closely. They talk too loudly, use words that are too simple, and smile too much. It's as if age automatically transforms us into incapable people. Mrs. May was right. Observing more closely, I realized there was an unwritten protocol there. All the seniors were treated the same way, regardless of their actual mental condition. It was easier for the staff to have a single standard of care than to evaluate each case individually. Lena, can I ask you a question? Does your granddaughter visit you? She gave a bitter laugh. Only once a month, if that. She comes here, spends 15 minutes asking if I'm taking my medicine and eating well, and leaves with a clear conscience. She's in real estate, you know? She has a prosperous agency. Funny how she never has time for her grandmother, but always has time for her clients. During dinner, I sat with Mr. Vance, the former banker. He was quiet, pushing the food around on his plate. Lionel, can I ask you something? When you worked at the bank, did you deal with accounts for people our age? He looked up. Of course, Gus. I was a branch manager for 20 years. And how did it work when someone wanted to access the account of an elderly parent or relative? Mr. Vance stopped eating. They needed a power of attorney, registered with the state ID, and depending on the amount, they often still needed the account holder's presence. I nodded. And if the account holder challenged the power of attorney, then it got complicated. The bank had to investigate. Sometimes they even froze the account until the situation was clarified. That conversation gave me an idea. The next day, I asked to speak with Miss Reed, the social worker. Miss Reed, I need to resolve some banking matters. May I use the phone? She looked at me suspiciously. Mr. Sterling, your son advised that all financial matters now go through him. Miss Reed, I didn't ask if my son authorized it. I asked if I could use the phone. Am I a minor? Am I legally incompetent? Do I have a court-ordered conservatorship? She looked flustered. No, Mr. Sterling, but it's institutional policy. Institutional policy, or my son's instructions. She didn't know how to answer. Later, during visiting hours, I observed the families who came to see their relatives. There were two clearly distinct types. Families who came out of love, and families who came out of obligation. The first group stayed for hours, talked, brought things from home, and participated in activities. The second group stayed for half an hour, had asked basic questions to the staff, and quickly left. I fell into a third category, the forgotten. Kendra came by to distribute the evening medications. When she got to me, she hesitated. Mr. Sterling, I spoke with Dr. Hughes about your medicine. He said he doesn't see the need for you to take most of these medications, especially the tranquilizers. I smiled. Kendra, can I tell you something? In the 40 years I worked as an electrician, I learned one important thing. When you find a wire that shouldn't be there, you don't force the connection. You investigate why it's there. She looked at me curiously. And what wire is that in your case? All these medications I never needed? This admission I never asked for, this incapacity I never showed? Someone is forcing connections that shouldn't exist. That night, I talked at length with Mr. Fields about our situation. Warren, have you noticed that our kids followed the same script? First, they came with false concern. Then they brought prepared papers. Third, they dumped us here and vanished. Mr. Fields sighed. Gus, do you think this is a plan? I think there are people who teach this script, yes, and I think our kids didn't invent this on their own. By the end of that second week, I had a clear picture of the situation. Devin hadn't admitted me out of concern for my health. He had taken me away from my home, my accounts, and my documents. He'd put me in a place where I would be treated as incompetent, where my words would have less credibility, and where I would be isolated from anyone who could help me. It was a clever plan, I had to admit. It only had one problem. He underestimated the man he was locking up. As I lay in that uncomfortable bed, listening to Mr. Fields' snoring, I started to elaborate my own strategy. Devin thought he had neutralized me. In reality, he had given me exactly what I needed: time to think, an environment to observe, and motivation to act. The difference between us was simple. He was underestimating an 82-year-old man. I was dealing with a 40-year-old man who never worked a serious day in his life, and who would very soon discover that messing with someone who has life experience can be very costly. The third week began with something that completely changed my perspective on the Havenwood retreat. It was a rainy Tuesday when I saw Kendra crying in the corridor, trying to hide behind the medication cart. I approached her slowly. Kendra, are you okay? She tried to cover it up, quickly wiping her eyes. Oh, Mr. Sterling, it's nothing. Just a difficult day. But I wasn't fooled. 40 years of entering people's homes teaches you to recognize when someone is truly suffering. Sweetheart, sit here with me for a bit. I pulled up 2 chairs in the empty hallway. You know, when I worked as an electrician, sometimes I'd arrive at a house and the lady would be crying because the power bill was too high. Other times it was because her husband lost his job and she didn't know how she was going to pay to fix the water heater. I learned that sometimes people just need someone to listen. Kendra looked at me with those red eyes and broke down. Mr. Sterling, I can't stand seeing how you're all treated here. She began to tell me things that made me understand the real dimension of the problem. The administration charges families like it's a 5-star hotel, but cuts costs on everything. The food is awful. Some patients go days without a shower because there aren't enough staff. Medications sometimes arrive expired. Kendra looked around, checking if anyone was listening. And some families admit their parents here just to get rid of them, Mr. Sterling. They know the quality is poor, but it's cheaper than hiring an in-home caregiver. Kendra, I asked calmly, and when you realized that a senior was admitted without real necessity? She sighed deeply. Officially, we're supposed to report it to Adult Protective Services. In practice? She paused. In practice, the management prefers not to rock the boat. A paying client is a satisfied client. It doesn't matter how they got here. In that moment, I understood that I wasn't just fighting my son. I was fighting an entire system that profited from the abandonment of people like me. That afternoon, during my medical visit, Dr. Hughes brought a piece of news. Mr. Sterling, I need to talk to you about a delicate situation. He sat down across from me with a serious expression. I received a call from your son today. He wants authorization to increase your medication. My blood ran cold. What kind of medication? Stronger tranquilizers? Mood stabilizers? He said you've been exhibiting aggressive behavior, that you've been questioning the facility's rules too much. I looked straight into Dr. Hughes' eyes. Doctor, have you seen me aggressive at any point? No, Mr. Sterling. Have you seen me questioning abusive rules or questioning reasonable ones? He looked thoughtful. You have questioned procedures that genuinely don't make sense for your specific case. Then explain one thing to me. Why would my son, who hasn't been here in 3 weeks, know about my behavior better than you, who examines me every week? Dr. Hughes closed the folder. Mr. Sterling, may I ask a personal question? What was your relationship with your son before you came here? I took a deep breath. It was time to be completely honest. Doctor, my son is 40 years old and has never been able to stabilize his life. Ever since his mother died, he started showing up at the house more, always interested in my finances, always suggesting I needed help. When I started resisting his advances, he intensified the pressure to admit me. What kind of advances? The doctor asked. He wanted me to sign a general power of attorney, he wanted access to my bank account, and he kept insisting that I write a will. When I refused, suddenly I became a confused old man who needed to be institutionalized. Dr. Hughes wrote everything down carefully. Mr. Sterling, do you have any documentation that proves your financial situation? I have all my documentation. It's at my house, which is probably in Devon's hands right now. That night, I called Mrs. May, Mr. Vance, and Mr. Fields for a private conversation in the garden. Folks, I need a favor from all of you. I want each of you to tell me what documents you signed. For an hour, I listened to reports that formed a terrifying pattern. Everyone had children or grandchildren with financial problems. Everyone had considerable assets. Everyone was convinced to sign papers for safety, and everyone was quickly admitted after questioning a family member's decision. People, I said, do you realize we are all victims of the same scam? Mrs. May shook her head. Gus, but what can we do? Who will believe the word of 4 old people admitted to a nursing home? Lena, you were a teacher for 50 years. Lionel was a bank manager for 20. Warren was an accountant his whole life. I was an electrician for 40 years. The 4 of us together have over 160 years of professional experience. We are old, but we are not stupid. The next morning, I asked to speak privately with Ms. Reed, the social worker. Ms. Reed, I need to report a situation. I believe I was admitted here under false pretenses. She looked at me with that condescending smile I was starting to recognize. Mr. Sterling, we know it's sometimes difficult to accept that we need help. Ms. Reed, I interrupted firmly, are you a licensed social worker? Or are you an employee trained to give canned responses? She looked flustered. I'm licensed, Mr. Sterling. Then treat me as a case to be investigated, not as a cranky old man. I explained the entire situation to her. Devon's pressure, the documents he tried to make me sign, the invented medical history, and his disappearance after the admission. Ms. Reed, under your profession's code of ethics, shouldn't you investigate these allegations? She remained silent for a long moment. Mr. Sterling, I will talk to the management about your case. When she left the room, I knew I had planted a seed. Maybe it wouldn't be enough. Maybe she would choose the easy path and ignore my concerns. But I had learned one important thing in those 3 weeks. Not all employees were just following protocol. Some still had a conscience, and if I could gain the trust of the right people, maybe I had a chance to reverse the situation that Devon thought he had permanently resolved. That night, looking out the room window, watching the rain fall on the poorly lit courtyard, I thought about the irony of the situation. Devon had put me here to silence and isolate me. Without knowing it, he had given me access to other victims, professionals who still had ethics. and enough time to understand exactly what he was doing. My son was always too lazy to plan things properly, and that laziness was going to be his ruin. The fourth week started with a surprise that made me understand that Devin wasn't just being negligent. He was being calculating. It was Monday morning when Kendra arrived with news that put me on alert. "Mr. Sterling, your son called yesterday. He wants to schedule a meeting with the facility psychologist." I asked the reason. "He said he's concerned about some reports he received about your behavior. Apparently, some staff members commented that you've been questioning things too much, asking questions about procedures." There was the confirmation of what I already suspected. Devin had informants inside the facility. Someone was reporting my activities to him. "Kendra, may I ask which employees made these reports?" She looked embarrassed. "Mr. Sterling? I can't." "Kendra, I'm not asking for names. I'm asking if you were one of the people who reported something about me to my son." She looked me in the eyes. "No, Mr. Sterling. I've never talked to your son about your behavior." During breakfast, I observed the employees with new eyes. Who in here could be passing information to Devin? The housekeeping employee who always lingered nearby when I talked to other residents? The nursing technician who seemed too interested in my conversations with Dr. Hughes? Or maybe the management itself, which saw any questioning as a threat to the smooth operation of the machine? That afternoon, Dr. Hughes appeared for our weekly consultation with a different expression. "Mr. Sterling, I've received instructions from the management to conduct a more detailed psychiatric evaluation." He placed some tippers on the table. "Apparently, there are concerns about the possible development of paranoia and excessive defiant behavior for your age." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "Doctor, let me understand. When an 82-year-old man accepts everything quietly, he's a good patient. When he uses the brain God gave him, he's paranoid?" Dr. Hughes sighed. "Mr. Sterling, between us, I agree with you, but I'm receiving pressure from several directions." "What kind of pressure?" He hesitated before answering. "Your son mentioned the possibility of transferring you to a more specialized mental health facility if we can't control you here." The threat was clear. If I kept causing trouble, I would be transferred to a place where it would be much harder to prove my sanity. At that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. "Doctor, may I make a proposition? Give me 1 week. If, in 1 week, I can prove that I am a victim of a fraudulent situation, you help me get out of here. If I can't, I will accept any treatment you deem necessary." Dr. Hughes looked at me, intrigued. "What exactly do you intend to do in 1 week?" "Prove that my son didn't admit me out of medical concern. He admitted me to gain access to my assets." That night, I gathered my group again. Mrs. May, Mr. Vance, and Mr. Fields. "Folks, the time has come for us to stop being victims and start being detectives." I explained the situation with the transfer threat and my gamble with Dr. Hughes. "Each of you will have a specific task. Lena, you were a teacher. You know how to deal with people. I want you to talk to all the employees you trust and find out who is passing information to our families. Lionel, you understand the banking system. I need you to help me figure out how I can verify what's happening with my accounts without having physical access to them." Mr. Vance nodded. "Gus, there are some possibilities. If you remember specific account details, we can try phone contact with the bank. Warren, you're an accountant. I need you to help me organize all the information we have about our cases. If a pattern really exists, you'll be able to document it so that any authority can understand." Over the next 2 days, our group worked like an investigation team. Mrs. May discovered that there was indeed a specific employee, a nursing technician named Troy, who had close contacts with several families. Gus, he doesn't just work here. He has a side business consulting families on how to admit elderly relatives. The information was pure gold. Mr. Vance, with Kendra's help, managed to make a call to my bank. Gus, your account has been moved several times in the past few weeks. Transfers, withdrawals, even signing for a loan. My blood boiled. A loan? From what I could gather, someone with power of attorney in your name took out a loan using your house as collateral. Devin wasn't just spending my money. He was putting me in debt. Mr. Fields' has organized everything into a makeshift folder. Gus, looking at all 4 of our cases, the pattern is identical. Psychological pressure, creation of a false medical history, rapid admission, and then intense financial movement. He showed me a spreadsheet he had done by hand. If we present this to the right authorities, there's no way to deny that a systematic scheme exists. On Friday of that week, I requested a meeting with Ms. Reed. This time, I didn't go in as a confused senior asking for help. I went in as a prepared man presenting evidence. Ms. Reed, I've uncovered some information that you need to know. I placed all the documentation that Mr. Fields had organized on her desk. There is an employee at this facility who is operating a scheme to facilitate fraudulent admissions. Ms. Reed examined the papers in silence. When she finished reading, she looked at me with a completely different expression. Mr. Sterling, this is very serious. If this is true, it is true, Ms. Reed, and you know it. The question now is, are you going to be part of the solution, or are you going to keep pretending you don't see it? She was silent for a long time. Mr. Sterling, I will need to report this to external authorities. Management won't like it. Ms. Reed, I said, standing up from the chair, when you got your degree in social work, did you take an oath? I did. Did it include protecting vulnerable people? It did. Then the time has come to honor that oath, because if you do nothing, you'll be an accomplice to a crime that's happening right under your nose. When I left her office, I knew I had won the first battle. Ms. Reed was going to act. And when the authorities started investigating the Havenwood retreat, they would discover much more than just my case. Devin thought he had neutralized me by putting me in there. In reality, he had put me exactly where I could expose the entire scheme that he and others like him were using to steal from seniors. The week Dr. Hughes had given me was ending, and I had fulfilled my end of the bargain. On Monday of the 5th week, something happened that confirmed all my suspicions about Devin. Kendra came into my room with a tense expression. Mr. Sterling, your son is here. He wants to talk to the director, and then with you. After nearly a month of being missing, he showed up just when I was disrupting the scheme. Coincidence? I highly doubted it. Half an hour later, I heard his voice in the hallway, talking to someone from administration. My dad has always been stubborn, but now he's becoming aggressive, paranoid. Staff members called me, worried. Lie after lie. I waited for him to arrive in my room. When he walked in, he came with that fake smile I'd known since he was a child. Hey, Pops. How are you feeling? As if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't abandoned me there for a whole month. I'm fine, Devin. In fact, I missed you. Almost a month without hearing from you. He had the audacity to look embarrassed. Pops, you know how it is. Work, hustle. But I came as soon as I heard you were a little agitated. Agitated. Interesting choice of words. Devin, may I ask who told you I was agitated? Some employees called. Said, "You've been questioning a lot, causing trouble." There was the confirmation that he had informants. I decided to test the waters. "Devin, how is our house doing?" He became slightly tense. "It's all good, Pops. I'm taking care of everything." "And my bank accounts?" "I'm sorting everything out with those, too. You don't need to worry about those things." I took a deep breath. It was time to show him I wasn't the senile old man he imagined. "Devin, did you take out a loan in my name?" The color drained from his face. "Pops, I don't know what you're talking about." "Devin, sit down." I pointed to the chair next to the bed. "I'm going to tell you a story. 40 years of working as an electrician taught me one important thing. When you find a short circuit, it's not enough to just replace the fuse. You have to find where the problem is in the whole circuit." He looked at me, not understanding where I was going. "Son, do you think I'm stupid?" "Of course not, Pops." "Then explain to me why you invented a false medical history to admit me here. Explain to me why you disappeared for a month. Explain to me why you took out a loan using my house as collateral." With every word, Devin grew paler. "Pops, I don't know what people have been telling you, but, Devin, nobody told me anything. I found out myself. You know why? Because you underestimated me." Devin tried to regain control of the situation. "Pops, are you seeing this? This is exactly what worries me. This kind of paranoia, these unfounded accusations." He stood up from the chair. "I'm going to talk to the doctor about increasing your medication." That's when he made the fatal mistake. By threatening to medicate me to silence me, he confirmed that everything I suspected was true. "Devin, before you leave, I want to introduce you to some people." I called Mrs. May, Mr. Vance, and Mr. Fields to enter the room. "Devin, these are my friends. Lena was a teacher for 50 years. Lionel was a bank manager for 20. Warren was an accountant his entire life." Devin looked at them, bewildered. The four of us decided to investigate why we ended up here, and we discovered very interesting things. Mr. Fields opened the folder we had prepared. "Young man, your father is not the only victim of this scheme. All of us were admitted under false pretenses. All of us had suspicious bank activity. All of us were isolated from our financial lives." Devin was visibly nervous now. "Look, I don't know what kind of theory you all invented, but—" "Devin," I interrupted, "it's not a theory. It's documented reality." Mrs. May stepped closer to him. "Young man, I spent 50 years educating people like you. I know how to recognize when someone is lying." She pointed to the papers. "It's all here, the pattern, the dates, the identical procedures. Your father helped us uncover that there's an employee in here facilitating this kind of situation." Devin looked at the door as if he wanted to run. "I need to go. I have appointments." "Devin, before you go, there's one thing I need to tell you." He paused at the door. "Miss Reed, the social worker, has already reported our case to the competent authorities. And Dr. Hughes is reevaluating my medical situation based on the evidence I presented." Devin went white. "What does that mean?" "It means, son, that you have a few days to reverse everything you've done before this turns into a police case." He left the room without saying goodbye. For the next 10 minutes, we heard him yelling in the corridor at someone from the administration, demanding they increase my medication, transfer me elsewhere, or do something to control me. But it was too late. The investigation had already begun. That afternoon, Dr. Hughes appeared with a satisfied expression. "Mr. Sterling, I received the Popular Workers' report. I also received a call from the State Medical Board asking about your case." He sat down. "I can officially state that your admission has no medical justification. You are a victim of involuntary institutionalization without foundation. Doctor, what happens now? Now, Mr. Sterling, you have the legal right to leave here immediately, and your son will have to explain to the authorities why he institutionalized a lucid man against his will. Dr. Hughes closed my medical chart. Furthermore, if the financial movements you documented are proven, this could become a criminal case. That night, and as I packed my few belongings to leave the Havenwood retreat, I thought about the irony of the situation. Devon had put me here to silence and control me. Instead, he had given me the time, the place, and the right people to expose exactly what he was doing. Tomorrow I would walk out of here. But Devon would have to deal with the consequences of messing with the wrong man. My son always thought being old meant being weak. He was about to discover that he had confused age with experience. And experience, when properly used, can be a very powerful weapon. Chapter 7. On Tuesday morning, as I finished packing my bag to leave the Havenwood retreat, Devon showed up again. This time, he didn't come alone. He brought a man in a suit who introduced himself as a lawyer. Pops, this is Mr. Philip Monroe. He's going to help us sort out this whole confusion. The word confusion irritated me deeply, as if 40 days of my life thrown away were just a confusion. Mr. Monroe greeted me with a professional smile. Mr. Sterling, I understand there are some misunderstandings about your situation here. I've come to clarify some points and perhaps find a solution that works for everyone. I looked at Devon. He was sweating, even with the air conditioning on. What kind of solution? I asked calmly. Well, your son is willing to make some adjustments to the procedures, perhaps some financial compensation for the inconvenience. There was the final confirmation. Devon hadn't come to apologize or explain. He had come to try to buy me off. Mr. Monroe, may I ask a question? Do you know exactly what your client did? The lawyer hesitated. I have a version of the facts, Mr. Sterling. What version? That there was a misunderstanding about your need for care, and that perhaps the admission was premature. I called Ms. Reed to join the conversation. When she arrived, I asked her to show the lawyer all the documentation we had organized. Mr. Monroe, this is the official report from the social worker of this facility. Read it carefully. I watched the lawyer's face change as he read. Mr. Sterling, there are some serious discrepancies between what your son told me and what is documented here. Devon tried to interfere. Pops, let's resolve this as a family. There's no need to involve more people. Family matters are resolved at home, among people who love and respect each other, I said, standing up from the chair. When a son institutionalizes his father under false pretenses to steal his assets, that's not a family matter. That's a police matter. Mr. Monroe put the papers away. Mr. Sterling, I need to speak with you privately. They went out into the hallway. Through the half-open door, I could hear part of the conversation. He didn't tell me about the financial movements. This completely changes the nature of the case. I can represent him in a civil matter, but if this turns criminal, Devon interrupted, explaining, justifying, lying. When they returned, Mr. Monroe was visibly embarrassed. Mr. Sterling, I would like to withdraw from this case. I believe it would be best for you and your son to resolve this issue through the appropriate channels. He quickly left, leaving Devon alone with me for the first time in over a month. Pops, I can explain everything. Devon, sit here and listen to me closely. My voice came out firmer than I expected. You're 40 years old. I worked 40 years to build what I have. 40 years waking up at 5 in the morning, carrying ladders, getting shocked, sweating under hot roofs. You know why? To leave a decent life for you. Devon lowered his head. Pops, I was having financial problems. And when you had financial problems before, what did I do? You helped me. Exactly. I always helped you. Always. But this time, instead of coming to talk to me like a man, you chose to treat me like a nuisance that needed to be removed from the path. I pulled up a chair to sit in front of him. Devon, you know what hurt me the most? It wasn't you putting me here. It was you inventing that I was mentally ill. It was you spreading to the staff that I was aggressive, paranoid. You didn't just steal from me, Devon. You tried to destroy my dignity. Devon started to cry, tears of desperation, not of regret. Pops, I'll give everything back. I'll cancel the loan. I'll transfer everything back. Devon, do you think it's just a matter of money? I got up and walked to the window. You made me spend 40 days thinking I was losing my mind. 40 days sleeping in a hospital bed, taking medication I didn't need, being treated as incompetent. I took a deep breath. Devon, do you know the difference between the two of us? He looked at me with red eyes. When I was your age, I worked to build something for my family. You, at 40, work to destroy what your family built. I sat in the armchair across from him. And you know what's worse? You weren't just destroying my assets. You were destroying the memory I had of you as my son. At that moment, Dr. Hughes appeared at the door. Mr. Sterling, your discharge paperwork is ready. You can leave whenever you like. Devon quickly stood up. Pops, where are you going to stay? The house is The house is what, Devon? Sold? Mortgaged? Rented? He didn't answer. Don't worry about me. 40 years as an electrician taught me to always have a plan B. I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. Devon, you wanted to get me out of the way to facilitate your plans. You succeeded. Now you'll have to deal with the consequences of your actions without the interference of your senile father. I paused at the door and looked at him one last time. Oh, and Devon, that subpoena you received was just the beginning. I left the Havenwood retreat that afternoon with the certainty that Devon would finally understand the difference between messing with a weak man and messing with an experienced man. For 40 days, he thought he had neutralized me. In reality, he had given me the necessary time to prepare a response he would never forget. As the taxi drove me away from that place, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw Devon standing at the door, talking desperately on the phone, probably trying to find another lawyer, or perhaps calling someone to help him reverse the damage. But it was too late. The machine of justice had already been activated, and this time he would have to face the consequences alone. My son had forgotten a basic lesson I learned in decades of work. When you mess with an electrical installation without knowing what you're doing, sooner or later, you're going to get shocked. The taxi dropped me off at the door of Mr. Vance's house, the former bank manager I met at the facility. He had left the Havenwood retreat a few days before me, after his daughter, scared by the investigation, decided to take him back home. Lionel offered me a room in his house while I sorted out my situation. Gus, after everything we've been through together, we're more than friends. We're brothers in arms. On my first morning at Lionel's house, I received a call I'd been waiting for weeks. It was the manager of the bank where I had held my account for over 20 years. Mr. Sterling, we received a judicial notification regarding your account. We need you to come in here to regularize some transactions that are being questioned by the Fulton County Elder Abuse Task Force. Elder Abuse Task Force. The words sounded like music to my ears. I arrived at the bank accompanied by Mr. Vance and was received by the manager as if I had risen from the dead. Mr. Sterling, it's good to see you. We were worried when your son showed up here saying you were admitted with mental problems. The manager took me to his private office. To be frank, some of the transactions he made in the past few days made us suspicious. What kind of transactions in this? I asked, although I already knew the answer. The manager opened my file. A loan of $80,000. $80,000. Using your house as collateral. Frequent transfers to his account. And even an attempt to sell your investments. My blood boiled. Devin had gone far beyond what I imagined. Mr. Sterling, when we received the notification from the task force to block all transactions, more than $120,000 had already been withdrawn from your account. Mr. Vance helped me understand the entire financial situation. Gus, your son was very smart in the beginning, making small transactions during the first few weeks to avoid drawing attention. But when you started causing problems at the facility, he sped up the process. It was greed that gave him away. In less than 2 weeks, Devin had tried to drain practically everything I had saved. Over 40 years. That afternoon, I received a visit I wasn't expecting. It was Detective Sarah Jennings from the Fulton County Police Department Elder Abuse Task Force, a serious woman in her 40s who greeted me with respect. Mr. Sterling, your case caught our attention because it's not isolated. We are investigating a network of people who facilitate these kinds of situations. What kind of network? I asked. Detective Jennings opened a thick file. Lawyers, nursing home staff, even doctors who provide false reports to facilitate involuntary admissions. Your case led us to uncover at least 15 other similar situations in the metropolitan area alone. She showed me photos, documents, a complex scheme. Mr. Sterling, the facility employee you identified, Troy, had already facilitated other fraudulent admissions. And my son? I asked directly. Your son will be charged with grand theft, false imprisonment of an elderly person, and medical record fraud. Depending on what else we uncover in the investigation, other charges may be added. The detective closed the file. Mr. Sterling, are you sure you want to proceed with this? He is your son. I looked her straight in the eye. Detective, if my son had come to talk to me about his financial problems, I would have helped him, as I always did. But he chose to treat me like an obstacle that needed to be removed. He didn't just steal from me. He tried to destroy me as a person. I took a deep breath. If I don't proceed with this, how many other parents will go through what I went through? 3 days later, Devin showed up at Mr. Vance's house. He was desperate, thin, with deep circles under his eyes. Pops, I need to talk to you. Mr. Vance left me alone with him in the living room. Pops, I made a mistake. A big mistake, but I can fix everything. Devin, do you think it's just a matter of fixing? He slumped onto the sofa. Pops, the police are investigating everything. They've frozen all the accounts. They might even arrest me. And you think I should feel pity? I asked calmly. Devin started crying again. Pops, I was desperate. I owed money to dangerous people. I was being threatened. Devin, and when you were being threatened, why didn't you come to talk to me? Because I knew you would be disappointed. Disappointed, Devin? I was destroyed. I stood up and walked to the window. Devin, do you know what the saddest day of my life was? He looked at me, waiting for the answer. It was when I realized that my son was capable of looking me in the eye and treating me like garbage that needed to be thrown away. I walked back toward him. Devin, you didn't just steal money from me. You stole my dignity, my peace, my mental health. Pops, give me a chance. Devin, I gave you 40 years of chances. 40 years helping you, supporting you, believing you would change. I sat in the armchair across from him. This time, You will have to face the consequences of your actions alone. It's not Pops who is going to fix everything for you anymore. Devin spent 10 more minutes trying to convince me, promising he would change, that he would give everything back, that he would never do something like this again. When he left, I knew it was the last time I would talk to my son as a father. From that moment on, Devin would be just another defendant in a criminal case where I was the victim. That night, I talked to Mr. Vance about my conflicting feelings. Lionel, it's strange. At the same time that I'm relieved to have uncovered everything, I'm sad to have lost my son. Mr. Vance, who had gone through a similar situation with his daughter, understood me perfectly. Gus, you didn't lose your son. You found out who he really was. And finding the truth, even when it hurts, is always better than living a lie. He was right. For 40 years, I had been the father of an illusion. Now, finally, I was a man free from that illusion. 2 weeks after leaving the facility, I received a call that would definitively change the course of this entire story. It was Detective Jennings. Mr. Sterling, I need you to come down into the precinct. We've uncovered something about your case that might be of great interest to you. Mr. Vance accompanied me, as he had for every appointment since I left the Havenwood retreat. We arrived there, and the detective greeted us with an expression that mixed professional satisfaction with personal indignation. Mr. Sterling, remember I said we were investigating a network? She placed out several documents on the table. We discovered that your son didn't act alone. He was guided by a group specializing in appropriating assets from seniors through forced admissions. My blood ran cold. Devin wasn't just an ungrateful son, he was part of a larger criminal scheme. The detective showed me WhatsApp conversations they had managed to recover from Devin's phone. Look here, Mr. Sterling. Your son received step-by-step guidance on how to proceed. She pointed to the messages. First, create a history of mental problems. Second, obtain medical documents to justify admission. Third, get a general power of attorney. Fourth, drain the accounts quickly. Every step had been coldly planned. Who was guiding him? I asked, although a part of me didn't want to know the answer. Mr. Philip Monroe, the lawyer who showed up at the facility. The detective showed more documents. He coordinates a network with staff from various facilities, corrupt doctors, and even forgers who produce medical reports. Your case led us to uncover more than 30 similar situations this year alone. Mr. Vance was indignant. You mean people are making money teaching sons to steal from their own parents? Unfortunately, yes, the detective replied. It's a growing market. With the aging population and the increase in seniors' assets, this criminal modality has emerged. She looked directly at me. Mr. Sterling, your son paid $15,000 for the consulting services of this network. The information hit me like a punch to the stomach. Devin hadn't just stolen from me out of impulse or desperation. He had invested money, probably borrowed from loan sharks, to learn how to steal from me efficiently. Detective, does that mean everything was premeditated? Completely. The more frequent visits in the last few months, the pressure to sign documents, even the choice of the Havenwood retreat, everything was guided by this network. In that moment, any last shred of pity I might have felt for Devin completely disappeared. One thing was a desperate son making a mistake on impulse. A very different thing was a son who coldly planned to destroy his own father's life. And now, I asked, now, Mr. Sterling, your case has become the tip of the iceberg of a much larger investigation. Devin will be arrested, as will the entire network. 2 hours later, we left the precinct with the certainty that justice would be served in a much broader way than I had imagined. Devin would not only be punished for what he did to me, he would be punished for being part of a scheme that devastated dozens of families. Mr. Vance remained silent for the entire ride back. When we got home, he finally spoke. "Gus, do you realize that if you hadn't fought back, we would never have uncovered this?" That night, I received an unexpected call. It was Mrs. May, the former teacher from the facility. "Gus, did you see the newspaper today?" I hadn't. "There's a huge article about the arrest of a gang specializing in robbing seniors. Your name is cited as the person who blew the lid off the scheme. She was euphoric. Gus, you didn't just save yourself. You saved dozens of other seniors who would have been victims of these people." The next day, journalists started looking for me. They wanted interviews about how I discovered the scheme, how I had the courage to report my own son, and what advice I would give to other seniors. At first, I didn't want to talk to the press at all, but Mr. Vance convinced me. "Gus, your story can help other people avoid going through what you went through." The first interview was for a local radio program. The host treated me with respect, asked intelligent questions, and let me tell the story my way. During the interview, I said a phrase that I didn't know would become a trademark. Age is not a synonym for weakness. Sometimes it's a synonym for enough experience not to be fooled anymore. In the following weeks, I received letters from seniors across the country. Some told similar situations they were experiencing. Others thanked me for having the courage to report, and still others asked for advice on how to protect themselves from greedy children. One letter, in particular, stood out. It was from a 75-year-old woman in Phoenix, Arizona, who said, "My story helped her discover that her son-in-law was trying to pull the same scam on her. 2 months after leaving the facility, I had recovered all my money. My house had been released from the fraudulent loan, and Devin was in custody, awaiting trial, along with the other members of the network. More important than that, I had regained my dignity and discovered that at 82, I could still make a difference in the lives of others. What started as my personal fight against Devin ended up turning into my greatest victory. Devin wanted to get me out of the way. Instead, he put me exactly where I needed to be to expose the truth and help others. Sometimes, life has those ironies, and in this case, it was an irony that made all the difference. 6 months after leaving the Havenwood retreat, my life had taken a turn I never imagined at 82. Mr. Vance's house became a kind of service center for seniors going through situations similar to mine. Every week, letters, phone calls, and people knocked on the door seeking help or advice. What started as my personal fight against Devin had turned into something much bigger. Dr. Hughes, the doctor from the facility, sought me out for a conversation that would change everything. "Mr. Sterling, I have a proposal to make. How about we create a project to educate seniors about their rights?" He explained that he had secured support from the state medical board to develop educational lectures. "You would be the main speaker. Who better than someone who lived through it to warn others?" The first lecture was at a church in the neighborhood for about 50 people. When I finished telling my story, a woman in the audience raised her hand. "Mr. Sterling, my son is doing exactly this to me. He wants me to sign a power of attorney. He says I need to go to a safer place." It was Mrs. Mercedes, 78 years old, a widow for 3 years. In the same week, I helped her contact Detective Jennings, and we discovered that her son was also being guided by the same criminal network. In a short time, our lectures were packed. Mr. Vance created a ledger where we recorded all the cases that came to us. "Gus, We've already helped over 100 families in the past 3 months. Mrs. May, who had also joined the project, was responsible for guiding families on how to document suspicious situations. Gus, do you realize you've become an elder rights advocate? Devon's trial took place on a cold August morning. I was there, sitting in the front row, looking at my son in the defendant's box, along with 12 other people who were part of the network. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a statement, I stood up and walked to the microphone. The courtroom fell silent. Your Honor, I didn't come here seeking revenge against my son. I came to seek justice for all the seniors who were victims of this scheme. I looked at Devon, who kept his head down. For 40 years, I believed I was raising a man of character. I discovered I was supporting someone who saw my age as an opportunity to exploit me. My voice came out firm, without anger, just with the sadness of a realization. But I want to tell this court that despite the pain of being betrayed by my own son, this experience taught me something important. I looked at the audience, which was packed with seniors who had come to support me. It taught me that our society needs to understand that age is not a synonym for incapacity. It taught me that we, seniors, have the right and the duty to defend ourselves when necessary. The judge sentenced Devon to 6 years in prison. The entire network was dismantled with sentences ranging from 4 to 12 years. Mr. Monroe, the lawyer who coordinated the scheme, received the maximum sentence. When I left the courthouse, journalists surrounded me, asking how I felt. I feel at peace. Justice was served not just for me, but for all the victims. Today, 2 years later, I coordinate the Vigilant Elders project across the country. Vigilant Elders has become a protection network where we guide families, report fraudulent schemes, and, most importantly, educate society about the rights of the elderly. Mrs. May has become my inseparable partner. Mr. Vance handles the administrative side, and even Kendra, the nurse from the facility, joined the group as a volunteer. Devon is serving his sentence in a state penitentiary. I've never visited him. I've never received a letter from him apologizing. I heard from others that he still blames others for the situation, that he hasn't fully taken responsibility for what he did. Some people ask me if I don't miss him. If I don't want to forgive him, my answer is always the same. Forgiveness doesn't mean accepting the unacceptable. It means moving forward without carrying the weight of hatred. Last week, I received a special letter. It was from a 45-year-old man in Houston, Texas, who said, "Mr. Sterling, I watched your interview on television and realized I was doing the exact same thing to my father that your son did to you. Your story made me reflect and completely change my attitude. Today, I care for my father with the love and respect he deserves. Thank you for having the courage to tell your story." When I read letters like that, I understand that all the pain I went through had a greater purpose. Devon wanted to silence me by putting me in that facility. Instead, he gave me the platform and the credibility to become an active voice in defending the rights of seniors. At 84 years old, I discovered that I still had a lot to contribute to society. And most importantly, I discovered that life experience, when properly used, can be the most powerful of all weapons against injustice. If you're listening to me and recognize your own story in what I've told, know that you are not alone. Age is experience, not weakness. And it's never too late to seek justice. Comment below if this has happened to you or someone in your family. Someone needs to hear this story and know that yes, it is possible to defend yourself. It is possible to seek justice. And that we should never, ever accept being treated as disposable just because we have more years of life. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see two new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.